What if we had no water? No water to drink, no water to grow crops, no water to sustain our livestock. In 2012, in the midst of one of our country's worst droughts in history, the state of Nebraska was wrestling with this debate. Some argued that conserving water by disallowing irrigation would ensure a sustainable residential water supply. Farmers argued that without irrigation, their crops would die. The Nebraska Farm Bureau Federation reached out to Decision Innovation Solutions, an economic information research company, to conduct an economic impact study to estimate the financial and job loss if agriculture was not able to irrigate. Spence Parkinson from Decision Innovation Solutions explains the study.
Hello, I'm Spence Parkinson with Decision Innovation Solutions, and I'm here today to talk about an economic impact study that we did for the state of Nebraska, and more specifically for Nebraska Farm Bureau. If you recall, in the early 2012, as far as agriculture goes, it started as a good year. Crops got on the ground in good time. There was some timely moisture early on, but as the spring and the summer wore on, the heat increased and the rain didn't come. So what ended up happening is starting as a good year turned into kind of a dry early summer, turned into a dry summer, turned into a drought, and then what we ended up with by late July, early August was an exceptional drought that gripped much of the Midwest, and Nebraska was certainly no exception. They had some of the worst drought in the country for the year 2012. And as that year kind of wore on, what ended up happening was because a lot of Nebraska crops are irrigated, the irrigators, the pumps were going more and more, and the water under the ground was being used at a faster rate. And not just by agriculture, but there are also other uses with people watering their lawns in town, and some of the commercial and some of the residential and the other uses that are stakeholders for the use of water. And as that began to happen, there began to be some more and more discussions about how to sustainably preserve and conserve water and what the best uses for that limited resource are. And so as that discussion kind of gained steam, gained traction over the course of 2012, the Nebraska Farm Bureau wanted to make sure that people that weren't necessarily real fluent in the agricultural industry in the world, that they understood exactly what agriculture meant to Nebraska's economy. And so that's when they reached out to Decision Innovation Solutions. This wasn't our first interaction with Nebraska Farm Bureau. We'd done several other projects with them in the past. We'd looked at what the economic impact was, for example, for the 2011 Missouri River flooding, where that impacted several of the counties on the Missouri River. We also looked at what the impact or what the current status of the CRP program was for the state. And there's a couple other things that we worked on. So they were quite familiar with who we were, and we'd interacted with them at some different meetings. And so as a result of them knowing us and knowing what kind of work that we did and how we have a rich background in agriculture and ag business and economics, they reached out to us and they wanted to have us conduct this study for them so they could help people that weren't necessarily familiar with agriculture. And what we did is we estimated what the direct impact would be for crops that were needed to be raised in a dry land environment as opposed to an irrigation environment. And as we calculated the differences in what those revenues would be, we found that it was about a $7 billion difference between being able to irrigate and not being able to irrigate. And that's what we call the direct effects. And after we estimated what those direct effects were, we inputted those into the in-plan model that we created for the state of Nebraska and ran the model. And what that allowed us to do is understand what the complete impacts are for not being able to irrigate in a drought year. And so what that type of an impact would include would be crop farmers, they would purchase less seed. So the seed companies would then have lower revenue. They may purchase less fertilizer. They may purchase less herbicides and pesticides. And so there's going to be just fewer dollars moving around in the economy. And once we ran all those numbers through the model, what we were able to estimate was what the total impact would be for the state of Nebraska if agriculture was not able to irrigate in a drought year. And what we ended up finding out as a result of this study was that there would be 31,000 fewer jobs, and there would be $11 billion lower economic output for the state of Nebraska. And once we were able to arrive at those results, we then presented them to the Nebraska Farm Bureau.
The Nebraska Irrigation Study was an example of an economic impact study, conducting research and analysis to determine the impact of a singular event. Another type of economic study is the economic contribution study. This type of study takes a look at the contributing impacts of a particular industry, group, or business toward the economic vitality of a specific region. In 2009, the Coalition to Support Iowa Farmers reached out to Decision Innovation Solutions staff to analyze the USDA Census of Agriculture data to determine the economic impact of agriculture by county in the state.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the 2009 Iowa Ag Economic Contribution Study, which is quite different from an economic impact study that we just discussed about the value of irrigation in Nebraska in 2012. The difference between an economic contribution study and an economic impact study is that when we're talking about an economic impact study like the value of irrigation, what that means is that there has been a change in an economy. So in that case, we were making the assumption that there would no longer be the ability to irrigate, which would then require changes in production practices for crop producers. When we're talking about an economic contribution study, what that is we're looking at an economy in its current state. And we're trying to understand how important various components of that economy are to the whole. Now, the 2009 Ag Economic Contribution Study that was done was actually a repeat of the original study that was done in 2005 by Iowa State University. And the reason that first one took place was because there were the various industries, ag industries, in the state of Iowa were coming up with their own estimates of what their certain industry meant in terms of jobs and income and output, among various other measures of economic activity. And so as they produced their own, everybody's came up with their different job numbers, the different output numbers, and when those numbers got added up, it added up to something that was far above and beyond what would have been expected given the size of Iowa's economy. And so that's why a comprehensive ag economic contribution study was originally requested from Iowa State University. One of the benefits that the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers was able to use as a result of doing this update was they were able to use the results from the 2009 study going forward through all the interim years between when we did it and when we're going to update the study here in just a couple months. And they were able to use that not only on their website that anybody can download and look at, but they are also able to use some of those results whenever, say, a new hog barn is constructed in Iowa or a new cattle feedlot is constructed. They can use some of those numbers. And not just the Coalition uses those numbers, but all the commodity groups have links to those visuals, those reports on their website, and they can use those to communicate to stakeholders and non-stakeholders alike what agriculture means to the state of Iowa and for every one of the counties that are in the state of Iowa.
Whether it's an economic impact study or an economic contribution study, this analysis can be key to improved public relations, which may result in enhanced stature within a particular community. This stature can be used to counteract negative publicity or to validate your point of view. It can also be used for coalition building, attract other constituents to your industry, business, or cause. 3 key takeaways from this video. 1. Impact and contribution studies are 2 types of economic studies which can be adaptable to your unique needs. 2. It is always better off acting from an informed position backed by data from independent research information. 3. The professionals at Decision Innovation Solutions have a great deal of experience and knowledge in conducting economic study. To reach Decision Innovation Solutions for more information on economic information research, please contact us at 515-864-6077.